The table was set for 10. It was p.m., and only the food had shown up. I'd spent the morning arranging everything perfectly: my mother's china, the flowers I'd bought myself, the birthday cake I'd decorated with shaking hands. 39. Candles waiting to be blown out by someone who mattered enough to light them. The salad was wilting. The roast was getting cold. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the family group chat, waiting for someone to say they were running late. Instead, I watched the silence stretch between unanswered messages. At T3:01, my niece texted the family group, "Too much rain just to go eat lunch." My father followed 30 seconds later, "Something came up with your sister. I'll stop by next week." I sat there staring at my phone, watching those words blur together. No happy birthday. No sorry we can't make it. No acknowledgement that I'd spent my morning cooking for people who couldn't be bothered to show up. The candles were still unlit. The silence was deafening. My name is Rose. I'm 39, and I finally understood what silence could teach me. If you believe silence can speak louder than words, subscribe to Revenge with Susie. It helps me reach more people and keeps me going to bring you more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, would you have done anything differently? I've always been the one who shows up. The week before my birthday, I'd driven across town to pick up Mom's prescription. She'd called Tuesday morning, her voice weak and apologetic. "Rose, honey, I hate to ask, but my car's making that noise again, and the pharmacy closes early today." I was in the middle of a work presentation, but I excused myself, because that's what good daughters do. When I got to her house, she was dressed to go out, car keys in her hand. "Oh good, you're here. I'm meeting Barbara for lunch. Can you just grab my pills and drop them off later? You know where I keep the spare key." The car was running fine. 3 years ago, when Mom had her surgery, I was the one sleeping in hospital chairs while my siblings sent "thinking of you" texts from their comfortable beds. When my niece needed rides to school for 6 months, my car became her personal taxi while her mother worked extra shifts that somehow always coincided with school pickup times. When Dad needed someone to co-sign for his medical insurance, somehow my name ended up on all the paperwork. I sat in that office for 2 hours, signing document after document, while he charmed the insurance agent with stories about his responsible daughter. "Rose will handle it," they'd say. "Rose always figures it out." And I did. Every single time. I remember the exact moment I realized I was invisible to them. Last Christmas, Lisa was showing everyone photos from her vacation to Mexico, a vacation she'd taken with money I'd loaned her for emergency car repairs. In every photo, she was laughing, relaxed, tan. "Must be nice to have the freedom to travel," I'd said, not bitterly, just observing. "Oh, Rose," she'd laughed, "you could go anywhere you want. You just choose not to." Choose not to. Like I chose to spend my vacation days taking care of everyone else's emergencies. Like I chose to spend my travel fund on their crises. I was 36 then, sitting in my parents' living room, watching my family flip through photos of a life funded by my sacrifice, still waiting for someone to notice I wasn't just the family secretary. The memory felt different now, sitting at my empty birthday table. I could see it clearly how I'd been training them to treat me like I didn't matter. Every time I said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time I smiled when they forgot to include me in plans. Every time I pretended their contempt felt like love. I started clearing the table at p.m. alone. Again, the leftover food went into containers I'd eat from all week. The flowers went into a vase on my kitchen counter where only I would see them. The cake went into the refrigerator. 39 candles still unlit, but something had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't making excuses for them in my head. I wasn't telling myself they were busy, or stressed, or dealing with their own problems. I wasn't rationalizing why a birthday lunch wasn't important enough to warrant an hour of their time. I was just tired. Tired of being the one who remembered everyone else's birthdays, anniversaries, important moments. Tired of being the one who showed up, who handled things, who made sure everyone else's life ran smoothly. That night, I ate birthday cake for dinner and didn't feel guilty about it. Monday morning, my father called at 7:23 a.m. "Rosie, I need you to swing by the insurance office. There's some paperwork that needs updating." I was making coffee, the same routine I'd had for years. Usually, the sound of his voice requesting something would send me into automatic planning mode, rearranging my schedule, calculating drive time, preparing for whatever administrative task he needed handled. Instead, I found myself staring at my coffee maker, watching the dark liquid drip into the pot. What kind of paperwork? I asked. Oh, you know, the usual stuff. They said it has to be done by the policy holder. The policy holder. That was me. I'd been paying his premiums for 2 years ever since his financial difficulties started. Difficulties that always seemed to coincide with him wanting something expensive, a new recliner, a vacation, a car repair that somehow cost twice the estimate. Dad, I'm at work. Can't you handle it? Silence. Then a laugh that didn't sound amused. Since when do you not have time for family? Since they didn't have time for my birthday, I thought. But I didn't say it. I'll see what I can do, I said, and hung up. I didn't go to the insurance office that day. For the first time in years, I finished my workday without leaving early to handle someone else's crisis. I had lunch at my desk and actually tasted my food. I left the office at PM like a normal person. The insurance office called me directly Tuesday afternoon. Miss Rodriguez, your father was here yesterday asking about his policy. There seems to be some confusion about the payment arrangement. What kind of confusion? Well, he's requesting to be removed as a dependent on the policy he doesn't pay for. But he wants to maintain coverage. When we explained that doesn't work, he became upset. I could picture it perfectly. Dad, red-faced and indignant, demanding special treatment he hadn't earned. I'll call him, I said, but I didn't. Wednesday morning, my sister Lisa called. Dad says you're being difficult about his insurance. I was getting dressed for work, looking at myself in the mirror. When had I started looking so tired? When had the lines around my eyes gotten so deep? I'm not being difficult. I'm being busy. Busy? She laughed, and something in that laugh made my hands still on my jacket buttons. Doing what? You don't even have kids. There it was. The thing they'd always thought but never said out loud. I don't have kids, so my time doesn't matter. My life doesn't count. My work, my responsibilities, my own needs all secondary to their assumption that I exist to serve them. I have to go, I said, and for once, I actually hung up first. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine, thinking about Lisa's words. You don't even have kids, as if having children was the only thing that gave a woman's life meaning. As if all the years I'd spent helping raise her daughter, driving Sarah to school, helping with homework, attending parent conferences when Lisa was too overwhelmed meant nothing. I thought about all the times they'd dismissed my problems because they weren't parent problems. All the times they'd assumed I was available because I didn't have tiny humans demanding my attention. All the times they'd treated my life like it was somehow less real, less important, less worthy of consideration. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be difficult. I wasn't going to argue or explain or defend myself. I was just going to stop pretending I couldn't see what they really thought of me. The insurance company called me directly the following week. Miss Rodriguez, we need to discuss your father's policy. There seems to be some confusion about payment arrangements. I drove there during my lunch break, already knowing what I'd find. The office was in a strip mall next to a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Places where people went to handle the boring, necessary parts of their lives. The agent, Mrs. Chen, pulled up Dad's file on her computer. She was a small woman with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who dealt with family drama regularly. Your father's been asking about removing you as the policy holder. He says he wants to handle his own payments now. I nodded. Okay, what does he need from me? She looked uncomfortable, the way people do when they have to deliver bad news they didn't create. Well, that's the thing. He doesn't have a bank account set up for automatic payments. And when we ran his credit check, she paused, sliding a paper across the desk. There might be some issues. The document was full of numbers and codes, but the bottom line was clear. Application denied, unpaid debts, several accounts and collections. His application was denied for independent coverage. I stared at the paper, my father's financial reality laid out in black and white. This was the man who'd been lecturing me about responsibility and family obligations while his own credit was in shambles. But then I saw something that made my hands shake. The bottom of the page was a section titled Additional Income Sources. My father had listed rental income from a property I'd never heard of. The address was across town, in a neighborhood I drove through sometimes on my way to work. Mrs. Chen, what's this address here? Oh, that's a rental property he owns. Generates about $1,200 a month, according to his application. But apparently, It's not enough to offset his debt-to-income ratio. I drove straight to the address after leaving the insurance office. It was a duplex, older but well-maintained, with 2 separate entrances and separate mailboxes. A woman was watering plants on the front porch of the left unit. She looked up when I parked, friendly and curious. "Excuse me," I called through my car window. "Do you rent this place?" "Yeah. For about 3 years now." "Are you looking for a place?" "I think the other unit might be opening up soon." 3 years. Dad had been collecting rent for 3 years while telling me he was struggling financially. I sat in my car outside that duplex for 20 minutes, engine running, trying to process what I'd learned. My father owned property. He collected rent. He had income I didn't know about. And all this time, he'd been letting me pay for his insurance, his medical bills, his emergencies. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. The contempt wasn't just indifference. It was calculation. I called the PI from my kitchen, looking out the window at the bird feeder I'd bought myself for Christmas. A small pleasure, something that brought me joy that I didn't have to share or justify to anyone. "I need you to look into some property records," I told him. "And I need to know everything about my family's finances." "Ma'am, is this for a divorce case?" "No," I said, watching a cardinal land on the feeder. "This is for my sanity." The investigator's report arrived on a Thursday, delivered in a manila envelope that looked innocent enough to hold my entire world's destruction. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, sat at my kitchen table, and prepared for whatever truth was waiting inside. Property records showed Dad owned not just the duplex I'd found, but a second property as well, purchased 8 years ago, around the time I'd started helping with his financial difficulties. He'd been collecting rent from 3 units total, bringing in over $3,000 a month while playing the struggling retiree to our family. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was page 3. My sister Lisa was listed as the property manager for both buildings. She'd been collecting a monthly management fee, 15% of all rental income, for 8 years while watching me drain my savings to help our supposedly struggling father. I sat there staring at the numbers, calculating in my head. Lisa had made over $36,000 managing Dad's properties, money she'd earned while I'd been writing checks to cover his expenses. I drove to Lisa's house that evening, the investigator's report on the passenger seat next to me. The house I'd helped her make the down payment for 5 years ago when she was desperate and couldn't find anyone else to co-sign. I parked across the street and just watched for a few minutes. The house looked different somehow, now that I knew how it had been purchased. There was a new fence in the backyard, professional landscaping in the front, a car in the driveway that was newer than mine, all funded, at least partially, by my money and my ignorance. Lisa answered the door in yoga clothes, looking relaxed and comfortable in her beautiful home. "Rose, what a surprise. Come in." I was just making dinner. Her kitchen had been remodeled since the last time I'd been there. New countertops, new appliances, new everything. I wondered how much of it had been paid for with her property management. "Effie's, we need to talk," I said, placing the report on her granite countertop. Her face went through several expressions as she recognized what she was looking at: surprise, guilt, fear, and finally, resignation. "Rose, I can explain. You've been taking money to manage Dad's rental properties while I paid his bills." She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "It's not like that. Dad asked me to help, and the management fee is standard practice, Lisa." My voice was quieter than I'd expected, which seemed to scare her more than if I'd been yelling. "I paid the down payment for this house." She looked around her beautiful kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. "The money I loaned you for this house came from my retirement fund." I told myself it was okay because family helps family. I picked up the report. "How long have you known about Dad's properties?" She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. "How long, Lisa?" "Since the beginning," she whispered. The absence of surprise told me everything. She'd watched me struggle, watched me stress about money, watched me sacrifice my own financial security to help our father. She'd watched me deplete my savings, postpone my own dreams, live smaller so that our family could live larger. And she'd never said a word. Not only had she never said a word, she'd profited from my ignorance. "Rose, please, we can work this out. Dad didn't mean for it to go this far. And I was just doing what he asked." "Just what?" "Just letting your sister play fool while you got paid to keep the secret." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "I won't be loaning you anymore." money. And I won't be covering Dad's bills anymore either. You can't just abandon family. I paused at the threshold, looking back at her standing in her remodeled kitchen, in her house that I'd helped buy, wearing yoga clothes that cost more than I spent on my entire wardrobe. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just finally seeing who abandoned me. The drive home was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. I felt empty but not sad, hollow but not broken. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know I was carrying, and someone had finally lifted it off my shoulders. The family intervention happened the following Sunday. I should have seen it coming. The text from Mom was to casual to innocent. Sunday dinner at my place. PM, nothing fancy. I arrived to find everyone there. Dad, Lisa, my brother Mike, even my niece Sarah. They were all sitting in the living room like some kind of jury, their faces wearing identical expressions of forced concern. Rose, we need to talk, Dad said. Before I'd even taken off my coat, I looked around the room, noting who was there and who wasn't. Everyone who had something to lose from my newfound clarity. Everyone who had benefited from my willingness to be the family problem solver. I took the chair farthest from the group, suddenly aware of how they'd arranged themselves a semicircle, facing the single chair, like I was on trial. I'm listening. Lisa told us about your conversation last week. I think there's been some misunderstanding. I looked around the room. Mom was avoiding eye contact, fiddling with the hem of her sweater. Mike looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah was staring at her phone, probably texting her friends about her crazy aunt. What kind of misunderstanding? Dad cleared his throat, settling into his performance. I'd seen this act before. The wounded patriarch, the reasonable father trying to deal with an unreasonable daughter. About the property situation. Yes, I own some rental income, but it's not as simple as you think. The expenses, the maintenance, the taxes after everything's paid, there's barely anything left. Dad, I held up my hand. I've seen the records. You clear about $2,800 a month after expenses. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa jumped in, her voice higher than usual. Rose, you're being really unfair. Dad's been struggling, and just because he didn't tell you about every detail of his finances doesn't mean he was trying to deceive you. Doesn't mean what? Doesn't mean he's been lying to me for 8 years while I emptied my savings to help him. You offered to help. Mike finally spoke up, his voice defensive. Nobody forced you to pay for anything. I looked at my brother who'd never offered to help with anything, who'd never even asked how much I was spending on our parents, who'd been conveniently absent for every family crisis that required actual work or money. You're right, Mike. I did offer, because I thought Dad needed help, because I thought we were a family. We are a family, Mom said quietly, finally looking up from her sweater. That's why we're here, to work this out. Work what out, Mom? Work out how much longer I should keep paying for Dad's insurance while he profits from properties I didn't know existed? Work out how much more money I should lend Lisa while she collects fees for managing those properties. The room went dead quiet. Sarah looked up from her phone for the first time since I'd arrived. Dad's voice got harder, dropping the wounded patriarch act. Rose, I think you need to remember that family isn't about keeping score. I laughed, and the sound surprised everyone, including me. It wasn't a bitter laugh or an angry laugh. It was the laugh of someone who'd finally heard something so absurd that the only response was amusement. You're right, Dad. Family isn't about keeping score. It's about trust and honesty and showing up for each other. I stood up, suddenly tired of sitting in their judgment circle. But since we're talking about keeping score, I have some numbers I'd like to share. I pulled out my phone and started reading from the notes I'd made that morning. $87,000. That's what I've spent on this family over the past 5 years. Dad's insurance, Lisa's house down payment, Mike's lawyer fees for his divorce, Sarah's college application fees, Mom's car repairs, Sarah's spring break trip, Dad's emergency dental work, Lisa's credit card debt, Mom's prescription medications. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each of them. Does anyone want to guess how much any of you have contributed to my life in that same time period? No one answered. 0. The answer is 0. None of you even remembered my birthday. Rose. Lisa's voice was pleading now, tears starting to form in her eyes. We're sorry about your birthday. We really are. But you can't let one missed party destroy our whole family. One missed party? I felt something cold settle in my chest, a clarity that was sharp and clean and completely without anger. Lisa, this isn't about a party. This is about the fact that I've been the family ATM for 5 years while you all treated me like the help. That's not true, Mike started. When's my birthday, Mike? He stopped talking. Mom, when's my birthday? She looked confused, like it was a trick question. Sarah, you live 10 minutes from me. When's the last time you called me when you didn't need something? Sarah's face flushed red. I walked toward the door, suddenly desperate for air that didn't smell like guilt and manipulation. Where are you going? Mom called. Home, to my house, that I pay for, by myself. Rose. Dad's voice stopped me at the door, sharp with authority he hadn't earned. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to come running when you need something. I turned back one last time, looking at these people who'd raised me, who'd shaped me, who'd taught me that love was conditional on usefulness. Dad, I haven't needed anything from you since I was 18, but I kept hoping that someday, you might need me for more than just my checkbook. I left them sitting there in their silence, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about walking away. The first call came Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m. Rose, it's Mrs. Chen from the insurance company. Your father's policy is going to lapse if we don't receive payment by Friday. I was drinking my coffee, watching birds outside my kitchen window. The cardinal was back, bright red against the gray morning sky. Then I guess it's going to lapse, but you're listed as the responsible party. I'm removing myself as the responsible party. Effective immediately, ma'am, your father will need to reapply and be approved for his own policy. Given his credit situation and the previous denial, that's his situation to handle. I hung up and blocked the insurance company's number. Tuesday afternoon, Dad called directly. I let it go to voicemail. Then Lisa called. Then Mike. Then Mom. By evening, I had 7 missed calls and a string of increasingly desperate text messages. Dad's really upset about the insurance thing. Can't you just talk to him? Rose, please. He's your father. This is getting out of hand. I deleted them all without responding. Wednesday, Lisa showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant knocked on the door. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She seems upset. I found Lisa in the lobby, mascara smudged, looking like she'd been crying. Rose, we need to talk. Dad's panicking about his insurance. Can't you just know, but what if something happens to him? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was wearing a new coat, expensive looking. Her nails were professionally done. Her hair was freshly colored, all while claiming our father was in financial crisis. Then I guess he should have thought about that before he decided to lie to me for 8 years. Rose, please. I know we messed up, but this is Dad's health we're talking about. Lisa, his health is covered by Medicare. The supplemental insurance is a luxury. If he wants luxury coverage, he can pay for it with his rental income. You're being cruel. I felt nothing at those words. No guilt, no doubt, no urge to defend myself. I'm being realistic. For the first time in my life, Rose, I'll pay you back. The management fees everything. We can set up a payment plan, Lisa. I'm not angry about the money. I'm disappointed that you watched me struggle while you profited from my ignorance. That's not something you can pay back. I walked back toward my office, leaving her standing in the lobby. Thursday, my brother tried a different approach. He called my work number, somehow convinced my assistant it was an emergency. Rose, this is getting out of hand. Dad's talking about selling the rental property to pay for insurance. Good. That's what responsible adults do. They use their own assets to pay their own bills. But then what's he going to live on? Mike. He gets Social Security. He owns 2 properties that generate rental income. He has more monthly income than I do. That's different. That's his retirement, and my retirement fund that I spent on this family was what? Monopoly money? That was your choice. I hung up. Friday evening, my niece Sarah texted, Aunt Rose, everyone's really upset. Grandpa's telling everyone you don't care about the family anymore. Can't you just fix this? I stared at the message for a long time. Sarah, who I'd driven to school for 2 years when Lisa was too overwhelmed. Sarah, whose college applications I'd paid for because she's got such potential. Sarah, who couldn't even show up for my birthday but expected me to fix everyone's problems. I typed back, Sarah, I'm not the one who broke this, and I'm not responsible for fixing it. She didn't respond. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made dinner just for myself, salmon with asparagus, a glass of wine. I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. I watched a movie without checking my phone once, took a long bath, and read a book until I fell asleep. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up worried about someone else's problems. Saturday morning, I woke up to silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no emergencies that needed my immediate attention. It felt like freedom. It's been 6 months now. Dad sold one of his rental units to pay for private insurance. The sale covered 2 years of premiums with money left over. Lisa had to find a new source of income when he couldn't afford to pay her management fees anymore. She got a part-time job at a boutique, something she claimed was beneath her but somehow managed to do successfully. Mike started contributing to Mom's expenses for the first time in his adult life, splitting the cost of her prescription medications and car maintenance with Dad. Mom acted surprised by this development, as if she'd forgotten that she had two other children capable of helping. They figured it out, like adults do when they don't have someone else to solve their problems. I still see them occasionally. Family gatherings are different now, smaller, more careful. No one assumes I'll bring dessert anymore, or handle the logistics, or clean up afterward. No one asks me to contribute money to family gifts or emergency funds. They're polite, distant, like I'm a distant relative they have to tolerate rather than the daughter and sister who used to hold everything together. Sometimes I catch them whispering when they think I can't hear. She's changed so much. She's become so cold. I don't know what happened to her. What happened to me was simple. I stopped pretending I couldn't see. I stopped pretending that their contempt was love. I stopped pretending that being useful was the same as being valued. I stopped pretending that silence meant acceptance. Last month, Sarah graduated from college. I wasn't invited to the ceremony, but I heard about it through a neighbor who saw the Facebook photos. They had a big celebration afterward, rented a private room at a restaurant, took pictures with the whole extended family. In every photo, there was an empty space where I used to stand. The spot between Mom and Lisa, where the family photographer used to place me because I was good at holding everyone together for pictures. I felt nothing looking at those photos. No sadness, no regret, no desire to be included. Just a mild curiosity about how they'd arrange themselves without me. They've learned to function without their problem solver, their emergency contact, their reliable source of last-minute help. And I've learned that I never needed their approval as much as I thought I did. My new friends, women I met at a book club, neighbors I actually talk to now that I'm not always rushing off to handle someone else's crisis, remember my birthday without being reminded. They call me because they enjoy my company, not because they need something. They invite me places because they want me there, not because they need me to organize or pay for something. My birthday is next week. I'm planning a quiet dinner with people who actually show up when they say they will. There will be flowers I didn't buy myself, cake I didn't bake myself, and candles that will actually get blown out. The silence between my family and me isn't uncomfortable anymore. It's honest. I stayed quiet long enough to hear what they really thought of me. And now I'm quiet because I choose to be, not because I'm afraid of what speaking up might cost me. They thought quiet meant weak. They learned the difference. If this reminded you of someone, maybe yourself, remember, you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining yourself.